Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedlie, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted and honored that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. We have two amazing authors and a co-host today. A little bit later on, Hanna Pat Oboyski will be joining me to interview Deborah Green, the author of Violet and the Pie of Life. But first, we'll be speaking with the author of Zoe's Scavenger Hunt Fun, Rinda Beach. Hey, Rinda, welcome back to the Reading with Your Kids podcast.
Oh, I am so happy to be back, and reading is my favorite thing. In fact, I took today off from writing, and I just read a book. It just sucked me in, and there's nothing better than a good book.
Isn't it wonderful just to get lost in the pages or the digital pages of a book?
And when you find a good character that you want to read along with and find out their story, I mean, that's what you hope you do as a writer, is that you put in that plot, you put in that story for kids.
Yeah. So tell us about Zoe's Scavenger Hunt Fun.
Well, I think it's funny. I always love the little details that you don't expect. On the first printout, my name is not on the cover.
Oh, my goodness.
Somehow we had changed the cover the day before, and it was, the first one was supposed to be of a marina, and then they emailed me like next afternoon and said, "We're wondering about this. What do you think?" And the new cover is Zoe, and she's doing a cannonball off the dock, and that's one of the big adventures, that she has a scavenger hunt that she's doing, and some of it is like things at the dock, but the kids in the story have a cannonball contest. So she didn't win, but she had the most creative one because she did it like a dog, like jumping into the water.
Oh, cool. Boy, I think everybody can relate to having a cannonball contest when they were young.
And that's on the front cover because the idea, and when we looked at it, we looked at both covers. I liked the other cover better as an adult. Mm-hmm. But the book's not for me. It's for a 6 to 10-year-old. And it has to appeal to them. And if you had your choice at age 8 between a book with a marina on a cover or a book with a girl on the cover doing a great cannonball in the summer, I know what I would have picked back then.
Absolutely. So what else are we going to see Zoe do in Zoe's Scavenger Hunt Fun?
Oh, my gosh, she has so many adventures. It starts off on the road to Norris Lake. And in some ways, it's like the book that I did last summer, except I could stretch it. Mm-hmm. I could add to the story, which was so much fun because, I mean, for me to do 500 words, I can do that like in 2 breaths. So we started on the way, and you find her scavenger hunt. They also did something on lake maps and on search engines, which I think is fun. The teacher and me, I'm a retired teacher. I've been retired for 5 years, and it's heaven. And I still like the idea that kids are having fun with a book, but there's something in the book that feeds them too. So that on the 3rd chapter, then we have the Cannonball Contest and all the things. She's one of 3 kids. So she's the youngest, competing against her older brother and sister. And you know, when you're the youngest, you never win. Mm-hmm. You never win. But Zoe did.
Whoa!
I shouldn't give that away. This was one of the things. The things in the book are inspired by the things that my kids and I did, because we've been going down. The book in the lake is Norris Lake, which was my lake, but it could be for any lake. It doesn't have to be Norris. Right. And my husband used to get out on the kayak or in the boat, and he'd boat in the morning, and that's where this picture comes from, where Zoe and her dad are canoeing. And my husband actually fell asleep. And when he looked up, there was a wildcat on the bank. And he was kind of glad that he was in the boat and there was water between him and the bobcat. So.
I guess so. You know, I grew up in the city, but for a couple of summers, my cousin lived on a lake. And so I went down and spent a couple of summers with him. And that's it's a really unique experience, you know, being at a lake and you have these summer friends. And you kind of grow up with them, but only in those 2 or 3 months in the summertime. And if you didn't experience it, it's kind of hard to describe, but it really is a wonderful experience for kids.
Mm-hmm. Well, even if you were like my kids who only got to stay for like a week for a vacation, your family is together in a way that, you know, as they get older, you don't get that anymore. Mm-hmm. And one of the neat things about this book is that at the end of it, I have journal pages. And you get a chance to write and to draw about your experiences. So when you leave the lake, you've got a storybook, but you've also got your own souvenir too. And, you know, as a mom, that appeals to me. You know, the idea that my kids can look back at a vacation they had when they're 8 and how much do you really remember when you were 8? Mm-hmm. And you can show those stories to your kids.
Yeah.
My grandkids. I think that's neat.
Yeah.
Or you can tell them about some of the things that they did, like, oh, my kids wakeboarded. Mm-hmm. That's the word I was trying to get, wakeboarded. Or the really cool one that I just love is when you go wake skiing, which just blows my mind that you start by holding onto the rope and then you throw it away and you're surfing behind a boat on a lake. And you know, normally you can't surf on a lake. I mean, that's ridiculous. But now with these wake surfboards, my 3 kids just love doing it. Yeah. I don't think I see many people skiing on the lake. They're either doing the wakeboard or they're doing wake surfing. And I've never been able to do it. I just couldn't. But it must be something flying across the lake with it's like flying. And you normally can't do that. And you're cruising and you're waving at the people as they go by. And it just looks incredible to me. Yeah. And I thought, if you're a city kid and you've never been to a lake, or you just, you know, this is a way to look out. And even if you haven't been to a lake, you know, to respond to the journal things like, what would you do if you were at a lake? Mm-hmm. Like I have one chapter about meeting some of the local wildlife. And this actually happened to my kids, but it happened in Florida. Oh. But down at the lake, we have skinks. I just called it a lizard because I thought that'd be more common for kids. And in Florida, my son actually stepped on the lizard, which I hadn't heard about before, because in Ohio you don't see many lizards. Mm-hmm. And the tail broke away. And the kids wanted to keep the tail, of course. I mean, that's what kids do. And I thought I can use this because we have skinks that like to sun themselves out on our dock. Mm-hmm. So it's lovely.
Really cool. You've shared a lot over your visits here on the podcast with this love that you have for spending time with your family at the lake, and it's just wonderful that you're able to share this with readers. Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping I can get them out to the lake. I mean, if I could do that, I would have known that I did something good.
Yeah. Well, that's really exciting. It's a great goal to have, to look and hope that your book is inspiring families to come together, spend that real quality time together at a lake, shut off the devices, leave the work at home, leave the work at the job, and just get out and spend time with each other, just enjoying each other's company and celebrating the fact that you have these people in your life that you love so very much.
And last year, with COVID, people were so thrilled to be at the lake. I mean, we actually were there, and lots of other people were. But I did a podcast with somebody in England, and they were still, I don't think they had a summer vacation last year. Their lockdown sounds like it was a lot more severe than ours. So I didn't say that I had been to the lake because I didn't want to disappoint those kids to think people in the States got to have vacation or holiday, and they didn't. But it's a blessing to be able to go, especially now.
Absolutely. Well, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about Zoe's Scavenger Hunt Fun.
Well, if you want to learn more about it, of course you can go to rindabeach.com. And I have a link that says books. And Zoe is one of my 3 books. So just click on that, find the pull-down button or the drop-down menu.
Yeah.
And I actually have, this is the first time I've done it, a PayPal button so that if you want to buy it from me, I'll autograph it for you.
Oh, neat.
Which is kind of fun because once you've paid into PayPal, they'll send me your email and then I can email back. In fact, I did that for someone just recently, and I asked them who they wanted it dedicated to or who they wanted it to or how they wanted it done, which is fun for me. It makes it special for them.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a really fun and special time speaking with the author of Zoe's Scavenger Hunt Fun. It's an early chapter book, and it was written by our guest, Rinda Beach. Hey, Rinda, thanks so much for being back with us on the podcast.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I hope I have something next year so I can come back again.
Before we invite our next guest into the studio, we want to invite you to connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and at Jedlie Magic on Twitter. Why do we want you to be connected with us on social media? Because we want to give you a book. Oh, well, we want you to enter our giant back-to-school book giveaway. Every day in the month of September, we will be giving away a book to one lucky listener. And the way to enter it is to connect with us on social media, find our back-to-school book giveaway posts, like those posts, share the post for an extra entry. And, you know, you can also go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, click on the contact button, and say, please enter me into the giant back-to-school book giveaway. And we'll do it. Right now, Hanna Pat Oboyski joins me to interview Deborah Green, the author of Violet and the Pie of Life. I'm really, really excited. We have a great middle grade novel and author here with us today. We also have a co-host. My amazing co-host, Hanna Pat Oboyski, is here. Hanna Pat, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing good, thank you. How are you?
I'm really great. I'm really excited to meet the author that you have lined up for our show today.
Yes, today we are talking to Deborah Green, the author behind Violet and the Pie of Life, coming to us from Orange County, California. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Give us a little introduction to your book, please.
So it's a novel for, it's about a 7th grade girl, and she, on the day that her father moved out after fighting with her mother, she gets the part in the school play that her best friend wanted. So she's got a lot of issues, but it's also got a lot of humor in the book. And one thing about Violet, the main character, is she loves math, and she finds it really helpful to make little charts and little graphs to kind of figure out her life, and even little equations about her idea of what life is. So there's a lot of like fun charts in there. I didn't want to make it look like a math textbook, so there's humor, and there's some sad things because it's about her parent separation in a way. And there's also fun things like being in The Wizard of Oz. So it's kind of like a weird combo, but it was fun to write, and I hope kids like it.
What made you want to tackle these kind of more serious and difficult themes through the lens of math?
Well, I kind of put myself in every book, and maybe that's narcissistic, but my parents separated and ended up divorcing. They separated when I was 10 and just had this horrible 3 years, and they finally divorced when I was 13. So I've kind of processed, it took me a long time to process that, so I'm hoping like kids can process this a little bit through my book. And I've also loved math. My brother's a math professor. And I find it relaxing, like to sit down with a Rubik's Cube. But I think a lot of people don't even know that they love math in some ways, like jigsaw puzzles. A lot of that is kind of like the physics and spatial ability. So it's just kind of a combination. I was also in The Wizard of Oz, just like my main character. So I guess it's a little bit of a autobiography, but I always like to give my characters happy endings. And I feel like I've had a happy ending in life too, but it's kind of nice when you base a character on yourself and you give her a happy ending. It's very cheering.
I bet. It's interesting because you're talking about, I can't imagine what it'd be like to have your parents split when you were in that very vulnerable age, 10, 11, 12 years old. Now, I certainly didn't come from a perfect family. There was a lot of dysfunction. But I can still hear some of the pain that you experienced, when you were 10 today as you were just talking.
Yeah, it's hard because as much as people tell you it's not your fault, and maybe it was just me kind of being a perfectionist, but I always thought, maybe it is my fault. How can I bring my parents back together? How can I make them get along better? And now I realize as an adult that, of course it wasn't my fault at all, but I wanted to kind of bring that into my character, where she kind of even tries to use math and flow charts to figure out how she can reunite her parents before realizing that, it really has nothing to do with her. So, I came through it, and I actually think it was best for my parents. My mom really became stronger after she separated. She was a stay-at-home mom, and she ended up, working and I have one of 4 kids. So my mom is really my hero. She was a single mother I was the second of 4, so she had little kids. And she ended up figuring out how to cope, and ended up much stronger than she started. And so, of course, I have the mom in my book who, I guess that is somewhat autobiographical because the mom also ends up stronger in the book.
Well, I do think it's important to write about what you know.
Yeah, and I think there's depth. I like writing humor. I like entertaining kids. And that's really my main purpose, is to make them enjoy reading. But I also want to have characters that they can relate to. And I think if you go through similar things with your characters, or even feel kind of similar emotions, you can get the kids more invested in your character because you can bring them to life. But, I also have fun things like a disastrous dress rehearsal where everything goes wrong, which is, always fun to write about. And I've been through some poor dress rehearsals myself when I was acting in school plays. But so I did want to have this combination of kind of a character with depth, and also some really fun stuff to read about.
As a theater concentration, I know about disastrous dress rehearsals as well. But I feel like most people can can relate to this idea of humor being a great way to work through things and like resolve tension. That, if people have some of these same events that are happening in your book, happening in their own lives, getting to have elements of humor throughout it as well, and, some more silly things probably like helps them process it even better, honestly.
Yeah, and sometimes, I've been married a long time, but sometimes my husband and I disagree, and it starts to get really testy, and then one of us will just, say something funny, and it really lightens the mood, and then we're like, why are we mad at each other? We love each other. This is silly. So I think humor can go a long way. I'm lucky because I've always had a sense of humor, which I think has really carried me through life. And even on job interviews, I feel like if you can make them laugh on job interviews, I don't know, every job interview I've had where I sort of cracked a few jokes, I've gotten the job. So I think humor can go a long way just to help you in life.
I think so too. It's certainly something that I've depended on making a living as a educational magician and bringing a little bit of humor to my magic. Do you find it challenging to write humorously? I know, when I'm in the spur of the moment and I can make jokes and make observations, but it's a little bit more challenging as I'm trying to write something humorous on the page.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about writing, though, is I don't know if you've ever, had a conversation with someone and then, 3 hours later you say, oh, this was the perfect comeback. Why didn't I just say this? Then when you're writing it, I do several drafts of a book. So, on my second or third draft, I think of the perfect funny line. So in a way, I find writing a little easier because you don't have to think on the spot. You can go back and say, now there's a joke in there somewhere. Let me get that joke in there.
How challenging was it for you to make math fun? Because I know looking back, especially in middle school, math was not fun for me at all.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of it is really hard. And so I didn't want to make it too hard. I mean, she's a 7th grader. She's good at math, but she's not that good at math. So, I actually had 3 12-year-old girls just look at her little graphs and charts and equations and make sure that they could understand them and that they weren't boring. So that was one thing because I did not want it to seem like just a math class. That, kids don't want to read that.
I have a question about not the main character, but some of these other characters that we see in your book. Because I noticed that the sub-characters seem like they have a big role, and I feel like that's not normally as common. Usually things are very focused on just that protagonist. So can you tell me about some of the sub-characters and their influence in this book?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is really a friendship story. And when you're younger, it's not so much about the romance, right? It's about friendships. And friendships have always been so important to me. And the other theme is jealousy. And so I think a lot of people, especially with the internet, they think, everyone else's lives are better. And I don't think they realize, what's going on in other people's lives. So Violet has this best friend that she's had for years. And then she starts making a new best friend. And there's a lot of conflict. It's almost like a love triangle, but with 2 friends, the old friend and the new friend. And then Violet also thinks that this new girl has the perfect life. And she is a little envious of her. But as she gets to know her better, she sees that her life is not what it appears. And I think that is, when people are only reading, the Instagram and TikTok and everyone's happy and everyone looks great, there is that risk of just thinking everybody has it better than you. So I kind of explored that through the book.
Yeah. I think that's very important for middle schoolers today, because I even, as a college now, I didn't grow up with social media, but the kids now are growing up with social media, and luckily when it became more popular, I was old enough to have the kind of mental maturity to be able to understand that, these perfect pictures everyone was posting, that, there's posing and there's filters and there's all sorts of editing that sometimes can go into it, but a lot of kids nowadays might not realize that when it's, the first thing that they're seeing. They don't have any background for it. Like I was looking at a picture that was comparing what like celebrity middle school students, like, from TV shows, from Disney and stuff, looked like back when I watched Disney Channel, and they looked like middle schoolers. But the expectations now for how middle schoolers are going to look, they have abs, they are like looking so much more like model-like, and it just seems like there's this gaining expectation for how people live their lives even at such a young age. So I think that tackling this idea of like perception of how other people's lives are is super important for this age group.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I would say being in Orange County, and I think I'm the only person my age that hasn't had Botox and isn't blonde. I don't dye my hair blonde, so I'm well aware. Even for adults, it's a lot of it is appearance, but I think there's you should look way beyond people's appearances and really get to know people for who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been really fun. I'm really excited. Deborah, is there a place online where people can go to learn more about you and more about your book?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I have a website, DeborahLGreen.com. So L is my middle name, so just DeborahLGreen.com. Yeah, or you can go to Holiday House, my publisher. So yeah, thanks so much. This has been really fun.
Yeah.
Yes, it has.
Yeah, well, we've had a great time speaking with Deborah Green. Be sure to check out her book. Hey, Deborah, thanks so much for being with Hanna Pat and me on the Reading with Your Kids podcast.
It's been great.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Dr. Stephanie Vavilala. She'll be here to celebrate Sabita Finds Her Voice. That's the next episode. Hey, I want to thank everybody who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to thank our guests, Rinda Beach and Debra Green. Also want to thank my co-host, Hanna Pat Oboyski. I want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.